welcome to Sectors Up Close. I'm Elena Casas. Our topic today is electric vehicles, and our guest is Ross Gerber, President and CEO of Gerber Kawasaki. Electric vehicles still account for a small portion of car sales, but the market is growing fast. New registrations were up 41% in 2020, even as the global car market contracted by a sixth that year. Companies such as Rivian are stealing much of the limelight, with the electric vehicle startup now valued at $100 billion after its blockbuster IPO, even though it has yet to deliver any trucks. But traditional automobile firms are increasingly taking on the likes of Tesla, which became the most valuable car maker this year. Tesla's market value reached over $1 trillion in October, surpassing the combined value of Toyota, Volkswagen, Daimler, Ford Motor and General Motors, even though those traditional automakers sell millions more cars every year. Add to this a number of ETFs that track the space, many with very different constituents and varying degrees of over and underperformance. In addition to EV makers, both these funds hold traditional automakers such as Ford, but also chip makers like Infineon Technologies. So, how should you play this space? Let's ask Gerber Kawasaki's Ross Gerber. Hi Ross, let's start, if we may, with Rivian, that big news electric truck startup. One analyst recently likened it to .com boom and bust pets.com. Would you agree?
No, I lived through that period of time, and companies like pets.com really didn't ever really have much of a business. It was mostly an idea, where Rivian is actually really close to going into full production of their vehicles right now. They're actually supposed to be producing vehicles already. So Rivian is really going through the growing pains of getting your ramp of your vehicles going. And that is a very difficult period of time for an electric car maker. And they still have yet to prove they can make trucks and scale.
Traditional car makers like Toyota, Volkswagen, General Motors are investing hugely in electric production now. So aren't they going to overtake these EV-only startups?
I don't think so. And it's mostly because I think to be successful in the EV business, I think you have to be all in your company to EVs. And I think the companies that are making ICE or gas vehicles don't have 100% of the incentive to see their electric vehicles be as successful, because it would cannibalize their more profitable gas car business. So we think that the companies that are most committed to EV production and scale will be successful, but the ones that are sort of doing this, I would say halfway, or because they're forced to, I don't think are going to be successful.
But the traditional car makers are making electric vehicles at much more accessible price points, aren't they? Whereas Tesla, which I know is one of your favourite companies and is 8% of your ETF, doesn't really seem to be marketing cars at a mass market. So doesn't that produce a difficulty?
Well, no. First of all, the traditional automakers are not selling EVs in any scale. The only company in the world selling EVs in scale is Tesla, with a run rate of 1 million cars a year and growing substantially with 2 new factories opening. So Tesla is really the only player in the EV game in any scale today. And we're still waiting for other competitors to be able to make 200,000-300,000 cars a year versus the 20,000 to 30,000 cars that we're seeing from most companies. We're very bullish about a company called Polestar, which is the Volvo spinoff of their EV company, which is already in production of vehicles and making a very nice car. So I still think there's so much demand for electric vehicles. Any company that can make EVs in scale that look good and perform well will do well. That's not the issue. So EV companies aren't really competing against themselves. They're really just taking business from gas cars.
And as I mentioned, there are a lot of different ETFs in this space, and it can look a bit confusing for the investor. So how's best to play it?
Well, it's obviously best to play it in my ETF, GK, because we have about a 20% allocation to climate change and EVs and transportation. So we're a very pure play for direct exposure in the sector. There's other ways to play it, and obviously Tesla being the best exposure overall in that sector. And then there's several other ETFs, one of which we own a lot of within my ETF and individually for clients is the LIT ETF from Global X, which gives you exposure to battery makers and suppliers, which we're extremely bullish on in serving the entire industry.
Thanks so much for that insight, Ross Gerber, founder and CEO of Gerber Kawasaki. Well, before I go, here are some of the top stories in this space. Toyota Motor has committed $70 billion to electrify its automobiles by 2030, with half of that to develop a lineup of battery electric vehicles, or BEVs. CEO Akio Toyoda made the announcement at this event in Tokyo on Tuesday. Toyota is the world's biggest car maker, but it's also a relative latecomer to full electric cars. It says it expects annual sales of BEVs to reach 3.5 million by the end of this decade, or about 1/3 of its current vehicle sales. That's significantly less than rival Volkswagen, which predicts half of its sales will be BEVs by the same period. Electric vehicle leasing startup Hive Technologies has closed a $30 million funding round to expand its fleet for drivers using ride-hailing apps such as Uber and Lyft. The service aims to supply EVs to drivers who could not normally afford to take out a loan to buy one up front. The company currently uses only Chevrolet Bolts in California, but plans to expand into several other states and expand its vehicle line up to 1,000 cars from the current 100. And finally, Tesla CEO Elon Musk says the company will accept Dogecoin for merchandise such as apparel on a test basis, sending the meme-based cryptocurrency up 24%. In a tweet, Musk said Tesla will make some merchandise available with Doge and, quote, see how it goes. Musk did not specify what merchandise could be bought with the coin. Musk's previous tweets calling the Doge the people's crypto helped it rise 5,900% over the past year, according to data from Coinbase. And that's your roundup of the electric vehicle sector. I'm Elena Casas, and this is Reuters.